Ross, you've done some great expositions. I'm sure, Scott, you've done some in your game. What's your favourite way to introduce backstories? So do you like painting those sort of scenes from the past, or do you like just having some guy in a tavern?
I I I prefer to do it like a movie. Like when I write them like a movie. Like I say, and I like to in my games I like to do them as dreams. Like sometimes like or dreams or flashbacks when they go to bed. Um and stuff like that to introduce like little flashback scenes.
Hmm.
But I tend to use the sort of movie, like explaining it like a movie. The camera fades to black. We see blah 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 blah, and the colors
Oh, I
run from
love
the
blah blah
like
blah blah blah
yeah.
blah.
Great
It's
character.
beautiful. They're so great. They're
Well,
very
Ross is,
underrated.
Ross is the blah blah blurs aside, or even incorporated. Ross is very good at that, the cinematic stuff. I think most people do think cinematically about their campaigns and probably their backstories like that as well. But mine would like it completely depends on the backstory in question. Like it's I introduce it through like, one of my players is playing like a stout little halfling who comes from basically the Shire. So in order to encompass that, I had them basically decide they were going to go visit that village because they were sick of all this fighting and they wanted a nice wholesome time with a decent sandwich. So I basically worked with that player to come up with their village, and then they went there. He was the only one that knew all about it and knew which twin was tricking who, etc., and all the gossip from the village. That was how I introduced it. So sort of through the player, sort of through a place. And there's another character who it used to fight in a war, and introduce his backstory by just having his old, slightly horrible, quite problematic and dangerous friends turn up every now and then and be like, all right, mate, remember when we served in the trenches of Thingy? And having moved on throughout the campaign, that character has now moved away from his slightly violent past and like all the dangerous stuff he used to do. So halfway down, you have his backstory represented by one person turning up who's got a weird smile and a knife. And he's like, all right, mate, how you doing? It's like that, oh God, no, you're not who I am anymore. So it depends, I guess. Like there's cinematic scene setting, which I think is wonderful. And it relies on a lot of narration. Or you can just be like, you recognize that guy. And the player goes, what? A place, a town, if they want to go visit, or a cinematic thing. There's loads of ways of doing it. And I think it depends on the person's backstory in question.
It does, and actually, this does link into something. We'll come to you in a sec, Dan, because I really want to hear how you've introduced backstory. But Chris made a comment in the chat that his biggest rule for players when they give them a backstory is that they have to remember it. So many times I've introduced NPCs only to have remind a player that the person is a major figure in their story. Which
Oh, that's absolutely right.
Yes.
I had this with a player where I had to, with the rest of the table were reminding him who his NPCs were and who his
God.
characters were. It became a running joke for 3 whole weeks. It's such a good point.
It's got to be so frustrating because that guy with the knife turns up and goes, "You all right, mate?" And he's like, "Yeah, see you later." It's like,
Yeah.
no, he's like your brother in arms, dude. Like, yeah, very frustrating. And Dan. So obviously, we've spoken about different ones. How do you feel about backstories and introducing them?
What you just described there literally is 1,000-year-old vampire. It's someone with a knife turning up and you not remembering who they are.
It is.
There's 2 ways that I really like to do it, and it's all founded on the whole thing of the thing that you're running the game for the whole table. That's always my key thing when I'm doing anything, is that the danger of backstory is you get into solo play where you're running a game for one person at the table and everyone else is just kind of sitting at the side not doing anything. And for me, that's not GMing. For me, I want everyone participating all the time. So there's 2 ways of doing it. Either the backstory enters the game as a key piece of plot that affects everybody. See what we're going to be talking about on Danger Recall quite soon with Freya Axborn arriving. And she arrives, but she has a quest for everyone. She knows Caragor better, but what she is doing and what she does in the story impacts the entire party equally, and everyone has a stake in it. So everyone is involved in that story, even though it sort of is channeled through one person. The other way of doing it, which puts more of a spotlight onto the person whose story it is sort of what we did with Lockdown Legends, where it's a flashback game, and it's okay. The story is about this character. They are the main person in it, but all of you, I want you to make characters on these parameters, and we're going to play the game, and what happens in it is totally freeform, and it's kind of understood that it's the last day of school and the rules don't super apply and we can have fun with it. But this is a game that we're all playing. Even though it's kind of about one person, we all get to have a go in it, and we end up creating a story, and at the end of it, we figure out how that impacts the character in the present day, and we've had games in the past, pre-Lockdown Legends, when we've done that format, where we've had all sorts of things happen. We've had characters die in their own backstories and then have to explain how that happened in the present day, and that all brings sort of interesting things. But yeah, those are kind of my two favourites, but it's all definitely couched with this idea of making sure that everyone at the table is a part of it, making sure that backstory isn't just a way of funneling towards one person.
Borash comes wandering over.
Oh, he's still alive.
Borash is never eaten by creatures. He is too mighty by this. I see that Borash has done well to hire all of you as his guards. You have done very well this day.
Where were you? Were you just hiding behind the cart or something?
No, Borash was hiding behind that camel. And he points at the camel nods.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did.
Yes, do not worry, Borash is safe, which is more than I can say for Tim. He gestures to the person who's in two pieces. But that is not a problem, for Tim did not pay very well for his protection. And so if anyone were to be eaten, I would hope that it would be either Tim or Sandra over there. And he gestures to one of the other merchants, who just suddenly looks like, sorry, what?
You are a very trying man.